Hello, and welcome back to the fourth and final part of this presentation on speaking for the unborn. And finally, we get to talk a little bit about strategy. We've already said that our goal is to open eyes and ears, to speak the truth, ultimately to open hearts. But what exactly does that mean? Now, it'd be amazing if we could win over our friends and neighbors with a single, simple argument, but that's rarely the case. What we're really hoping for is just a meaningful step in the right direction. And what does that sound like? Well, I think it sounds something like this. You know, that's interesting. I'd never really thought about it that way before. That's the sound of the heart opening to the truth. And where exactly do we focus our efforts? Well, certainly in the courtrooms and legislatures. But the most important place for us to work is in the normal circumstances of our ordinary, everyday lives, meaning with our friends, our families, and our neighbors, one person at a time. And what about how we speak to those around us? Well, we speak charitably, intelligently, and persuasively, and we always focus on winning hearts, not arguments. Our arguments are brief, clear, and articulate, and never more than 30 seconds long. And we're always mindful that nearly 25% of the women we'll speak with will have already had an abortion. And these women are our friends, our family, and our neighbors who have simply made a terrible mistake. And we've all made terrible mistakes in our lives. So many of these women are burdened with tremendous guilt and deserve our compassion. Okay, so we've now talked about to whom we speak and how we speak, but what about the actual words we speak? Well, that's the focus of the book that accompanies this talk, which will teach you our best pro-life arguments. But first, I want to quickly mention what I think is a critical point, and that is, I strongly urge you to avoid all religious arguments against abortion. The vast majority of abortion advocates are secular liberals who think the religious are unsophisticated, unthinking, brainwashed, backwards, and intolerant Jesus freaks. So if you're debating a non-religious person about abortion, and you've made 10 very compelling arguments for protecting the unborn, but then you happen to mention the word God, or sanctity of life, or sin, or the Bible, well, you'll suddenly see the face of the person you're speaking with dramatically change. And then you can immediately read their mind, which is suddenly saying something like this. Sorry, I hadn't realized you're a freak. Have a nice day. And then every rational, non-religious argument you made just vanishes. I've come to learn that making a religious argument is simply handing your opponent a huge club with which to beat you over the head. We have many, many compelling non-religious arguments that powerfully explain why abortion is wrong. Let's stick to them. Another important issue, what about compromise? Must we not yield a single inch in this fight, or is there room for compromise? This is a hotly contested issue, and each of us is entitled to our own opinion. Here's mine. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. I support what's called incrementalism, advancing our cause step by step, winning small battles one at a time. The ultimate hope, of course, is to eventually end abortion. Perhaps we start by fighting against third trimester abortions, or abortions after 12 weeks, or after the baby has a heartbeat. These are reasonable debates for all of us to have. And this brings us finally to the last part of this presentation, what you can do to defend and speak for the unborn. And aside from having a firm grasp of the material we've been discussing, there are several concrete steps you can take. First, prepare and memorize a 30-second summary of why you are pro-life. You can write your own or use the one I provided in the book. In either case, practice it, memorize it, and be able to give it at a moment's notice. My experience is that the chance to defend our position is pretty common and often arises unexpectedly. You might get only one shot to make your case, so make it count. Next, know your 30-second rebuttals for every pro-choice argument, and all of them are found in the book. You don't need to memorize them word for word, but practicing them will help you learn them as bullet points, easily recalled when needed. And finally, download to your phone some of the videos and photos from this presentation and be ready to share them. Very often, these images are more convincing than any verbal arguments you'll ever make. Now, what does this 30-second summary of why I'm pro-life sound like? Well, this one's mine, and it goes like this. I'm pro-life because I'm pro-science. There's overwhelming scientific consensus that life begins at conception. And I'm pro-life because social justice begins in the womb. Every living human being is entitled to the most fundamental human right, that being life itself, because being a burden on someone is never justification for killing them. And I'm pro-life because I'm pro-woman. Abortion degrades women, treating their fertility as a defect, enabling men to use and then abandon women at their most vulnerable. Abortion never empowers women, only the men who wish to exploit them. And I'm pro-life because I'm against violence. Abortion is not only immoral, but is an act of extreme violence against the most vulnerable. And I'm pro-life because of the visible evidence. Ultrasound and MRI now clearly reveal to the world what's moving inside a woman's body. a living baby. And lastly, I'm pro-life because of moral conscience. If abortion is the killing of an innocent unborn child, then it's immoral and cowardly to remain silent. And that's why I'm pro-life. And you might then ask the person you're debating, why aren't you? And I can assure you, nearly all abortion advocates will be stunned into silence, unable to articulate any defense of abortion aside from a few cliches or a personal attack. Unfortunately, though, most on the pro-life side are also unprepared to effectively defend our position. We know that abortion is wrong, but that's simply not good enough. We must be able to articulate our specific reasons to anyone who asks. So get ready, make your own summary or use mine, but practice it and memorize it. You'll be astonished as to how effective our arguments really are. And this finally brings us to the book that accompanies this presentation, 30-Second Pro-Life Rebuttals to Pro-Choice Arguments. Now that you have an understanding of these background materials, you're ready to start learning the rebuttals. In this short book are all the pro-choice arguments you'll ever hear, and you'll be prepared to answer every one of them. And by the way, I have the word disclaimer up here for a very important reason. The bulk of the arguments and rebuttals included in this book are not original with me. They incorporate the work of many pro-life leaders and thinkers, and the last thing I want to do here is take credit for work that's not mine. So each argument and rebuttal includes its source materials and additional reading if desired. Now, before briefly mentioning these arguments and rebuttals, I want to make an important point. Rarely in life's greatest debates are the issues clear-cut, black and white, so to speak. Most of the time, there's a tremendous gray area where nuanced complexities really cloud the issues at hand. Let me be clear, abortion is not one of those issues. Abortion really is a black and white issue that can be addressed clearly and logically. The pro-life position relies on facts, truth, and science, while the pro-choice position, sadly, relies on cliches, deception, and personal attacks. And facts simply outweigh cliches and deception every time. Which, by the way, makes this guy very excited. And you too should feel excited and encouraged to join this important movement. In this book, the pro-choice arguments are organized into 8 categories, which I think really helps us to organize our rebuttals. And here they are. First, it's not alive or a human or a person, that clump of cells argument. Next, a woman's autonomy, my body, my choice. Thirdly, that one should never impose their personal beliefs on others. Number 4, that it's unfair to women to bear the burden and personal hardships of an unwanted pregnancy. Number 5, that the pro-life movement is just anti-woman. We're just simply misogynists. 6, that abortion actually empowers women. Number 7, that abortion is best for society and best for unwanted babies. And lastly, a miscellaneous category for a few leftover arguments. So these are their arguments. And let me tell you, they really tick this guy off. But they motivate this guy to fight back, which is precisely what we do with this book. Abortion advocates will argue, but we're ready to reply. And our rebuttals are very compelling. And they look something like this. They're clear, logical, and concise, always less than 30 seconds long. So when someone says to you, a fetus or embryo is not alive, it's just a clump of cells, you can not only give them your compelling 30-second rebuttal, but you have the sources and citations to support your facts, even additional reading if anyone wants it. And then, well, you can blow them a kiss. Or if they tell you that a woman has the right to control her own body, you can either reply with this brief rebuttal, also with its sources, or you might prefer to simply let the unborn speak for themselves by showing them images and videos downloaded to your phone. And these images will quickly reveal that each pregnancy involves 2 separate human bodies, both alive, both with intrinsic moral value, and both with unalienable human rights. So it's our task now to practice and learn these rebuttals, so that when someone says to you, for example, you're just anti-woman, a misogynist, you can kindly yet firmly tell them, I'm not anti-woman at all, I'm just anti-killing. In fact, since nearly 500,000 baby girls are aborted each year in the United States, my position is fiercely pro-woman. And again, you'll always have your citations and readings to support your rebuttal. Now, you might be wondering, what do these rebuttals actually sound like when put into action? Well, we've hired 2 professional actors to show you precisely how it's done. Note the confident and friendly tone. Gesticulate as necessary. Keep the conversation friendly. I do, however, generally recommend wearing clothes. What's so funny? Okay, I was just reminding you that we always speak with kindness and a smile. Now, I always end these talks with an important reminder that as members of the pro-life movement, we must always do more than simply ban abortion, because abortion is not a sign that women are free, but a sign that they are desperate. So please become familiar with the resources for pregnant women in your community, places that offer medical, financial, emotional support, as well as adoption resources, and be able to give out these numbers when the need arises. And by the way, all of these resources are listed in the book, because all pregnant mothers need to know that the pro-life movement is on their side. And finally, and this really is the end, please remember that while no single rebuttal in this book might convert anyone, they will be compelling when they're gently pieced together to form a coherent, overall picture of the truth. And that's precisely how we win hearts and defend these, our most vulnerable children. And if you need one last simple reminder why we're doing all of this, because whether inside or outside the uterus, we're simply talking about babies. Thank you again for all your kind attention. Now, let's get to work.